Good morning. You got up early. Yay you, yay us. I am the Reverend Julia McKay. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm so happy to see you this morning. And we're so happy to have this special occasion to gather on. In the early hours of June 28, 1969, I was 8 years old, and police raided the Stonewall Inn. Gay bars were frequent targets of these raids. They were met with an uprising this time, however, of gay and lesbian and transgender people, especially women with their heels. I'm serious. They used their heels as a weapon. On that day, and June 28th would become the day that gay liberation parades commemorate the defiance and the beginning of the Pride movement. This day is about courage. The women you see on these photos placed around the large and small halls are your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, your colleagues, your clients. You see them and others like them every day. They are older women. They are part of the LGBTQIA2+ community. If you want to know what the 2 is, well, the I is intersex, the A is asexual, and the 2 is two-spirit. So we're extending our acronyms a bit these days. These are older women. They are part of the queer community, and they are brave. The women you see on these walls grew up when coming out meant a big risk, risking their health, their jobs, their housing, their families, their friends. To stay safe, many stayed silent for years. They've been whispered about, shouted at, insulted, rejected, exiled, and isolated. Stereotypes and stigma filled the vacuum of silence. But here they are today, profoundly strong, profoundly courageous, and liberated in a world where it is still and again so difficult to be ourselves. Yeah, big sigh. Ron had a big sigh there. So today, I ask you to take some time to look into their eyes, because when we see each other eye to eye, which is the name of this exhibit and the purpose, eye to eye, we can see our own humanity in one another. In the presence of these women today, we see ourselves reflected here. I will also say that there was a young woman about 45, who said to me, I'm an elder in the LGBTQ community. I'm the oldest person I see. And I said, no, you're not an elder. Not yet. You're getting there. So one of the important things, I think, is for the young folks coming up and coming out to see their elders. And that's part of this exhibit. So as we light our chalice, let yourself linger. Let yourself be moved, and let yourself answer the call to love. And this morning we will also, in lieu of our individual joys and sorrows, we will light a candle for all of the joys we carry this day. It's a joyful day. It's a vibrant day. It's a flamboyant day, because we have to have some of that. And then we will drop a stone for all of the concerns, not only for our queer community, but all the concerns that each of us carry today. So glad you're here.
We are All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Ron Ferris. My pronouns are he, him. Happy Pride Sunday, everybody. As I scroll my social media, it's becoming apparent that Pride Sunday has begun to achieve a high place, like what Christmas and Easter once occupied on the UU liturgical calendar. And all over the country throughout this month, congregations are pulling out all the stops, changing what they do normally, and joining together in recognition and celebration of queer perseverance and joy. And this gets a resounding, but of course we are. But it wasn't always this way. In fact, in 1967, the UU Committee on Goals found that 99.9% of UUs surveyed reported that homosexuality should be discouraged. So what happened between now and then? Courage and integrity happened. In other words, a gay man took a stand. In 1969, so this is 2 years later, the Reverend James Stoll came out publicly on the national scene. 1969. Now, he never held a pulpit again. But his courage and its consequence began to move the tradition. Just 1 year later, the UUA General Assembly passed a resolution calling for an end to discrimination against homosexuals and bisexuals. And 3 years after that, the General Assembly voted to create an Office of Gay Affairs at the UUA. And then in 1979, so we've moved ahead about 10 years, the Reverend Morgan Strong became the first openly gay minister to be called to serve, as he was hired by All Souls congregation. Not this one. It's in Maine. There's a lot of us. Mark Bellantini was also hired that year by the First UU Society of San Francisco. So that's 1979. By the turn of the century, 2000, just in case you didn't know what the turn of the century was, 27% of UU congregations were officially welcoming congregations. In 2002, South Valley UU in Salt Lake City called the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison the first out transgender person in the UU ministry to be called as a parish minister. It's not just that Unitarian Universalism has taken up the cause of LGBTQ people. It's that LGBTQ people have taken up the cause of Unitarian Universalism. In working with and as LGBTQ UUs, we have changed the fabric of our tradition and so enabled ourselves to take more bold steps toward building the beloved community. This has deep impacts on our tradition and, as it should be, on ourselves personally. As the queer community has persistently and courageously insisted on patriarchy's acceptance and acknowledgement of queer integrity and joy, I have personally found my world much bigger than it was. My love far more expansive, my sense of myself both less rigid and more secure. And so not only do I present as an ally and move in solidarity, I am deeply grateful for the integrity, courage, justice, and love that my queer siblings have won for themselves, and maybe, not as strangely as it might first appear, for me as well. Thank you. The celebration of Pride, starting as it did with a riot in New York, has evolved into a worldwide celebration of integrity and courage and love. While we must never lose sight of its origin, its reason, and the people it centers, I think we can also observe that Pride is the quintessential holiday of what comes to be a collective liberation. And for that, and for all the work and pain, all the terror overcome, all the love unleashed, may we be humbled, may we be grateful for its deliverance, vigilant in its defense, and joyous in its celebration. Happy Pride, y'all. And if that was too confusing, we've got a storybook to make it clear. So you are currently sitting in a vehicle of collective liberation. And like most vehicles, it needs fuel. And that's where you come in, because now is the time for the offering. I'm really glad the kids are in, because as the plate comes by, you can make sure that your parents are putting in enough to get us from here to collective liberation. We're deeply grateful for your contribution of time, talent, and in this moment, treasure. Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you, Yvonne. So beautiful. So while the slide is being changed, there's a little tricks that he's got to do, so don't look up there for a moment. And I'll just take this time to thank everybody who participated in, it's mostly the community group, but others as well, our queer group here at All Souls, really came together to bring this exhibit down. We are the first Southern Colorado site to host the exhibit, and in a moment, oh, there's Carey, she's there. So, hi, Carey.
Hi.
In a moment, we'll get to hear Carey's idea about this and how it came to be and what it means. So, I just want to thank everybody. I wonder if we could give a hand to all the people who worked so hard. Yeah. So about Carey. Carey Candrian is an associate professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine in Denver and serves on the National Board of Directors at GLMA, Health Professionals Advancing LGBTQ Equality. Carey came out to herself when she was 16, but didn't tell family and friends until she was 28. It's still hard, she says. And since 2014, she's been dedicated to advancing health equity for older LGBTQ communities. For the Eye to Eye Project, she interviewed nearly 36 elder lesbian trans women, 59 to 85 years old, during the first year of COVID-19 to understand their health needs and the challenges they faced with the health disparities that exist. Carey lives in Longmont, Colorado, and was here with us Friday night talking about the exhibit. So we didn't feel like we needed to have her drive all the way from Longmont again for this morning. So thank you for welcoming her to our worship service. Please welcome Carey Candrian.
Thank you so much, Reverend McKay. Thank you. Thanks all of you for being here this morning. I know it's early, and also just bringing this exhibit down to the Springs. As Reverend McKay said, this is the first time these women have traveled outside of Denver, Boulder area, so it really means a lot. And I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I am glad I was there Friday, so I got to experience the beautiful space, and I have a better sense of what it feels like to be there. As I did say Friday, I do have a confession, and that is that I'm not a photographer. I'm a researcher, and my research is really all about understanding the disparities older LGBT people face, and the impact this has on their life. And a big part of my work is really around serious illness and end of life and assisted living. And when you look at the statistics for older LGBT people, it's not pretty. For example, from the research we have, they have higher rates of anxiety and depression, substance abuse, certain cancers, cardiovascular disease, and suicide. And here's the big one: the stress of living a lifetime of stigma and discrimination can take up to 12 years off their lives. The question is really why? How exactly does stigma and discrimination have such an impact? And what can we do to make things better for this community? So in addition to working with large amounts of data, my research includes interviewing people. And to date, I think I've interviewed probably over 100 LGBTQ women. And a lot of these interviews have taken place in assisted living communities, which it turns out are not very welcoming places for people who are LGBTQ. So I wanted to do something about this. So I got a grant to work with assisted living communities to really help them become more inclusive and safe places for LGBTQ residents and staff. And we had tremendous pushback when we first got this grant. It was to train staff across 6 faith-based assisted living communities in Colorado. We weren't allowed to show a rainbow. We weren't allowed to use the initials LGBT. In a series of conversations that really lasted almost about 11 or 12 months, they finally gave me the approval to go into these communities because they were truly convinced that these residents didn't exist in their communities. And so being a researcher, I thought, perfect, this will be easy. I am going to just give them the biggest statistics to see if this will really help open hearts and minds. So I shared statistics like in the last year, 56% of LGBT adults report experiencing some type of discrimination from a healthcare provider. For those who are trans, gender nonconforming, it jumps to 70%. Or the fact that 75% of LGBT adults go back into the closet when they enter places like assisted living. And I also shared this one, that 48%, almost half of LGBT adults don't come out to their doctors because they're afraid if they tell them, their care will get worse. I share these statistics and had no response. Hearts and minds did not seem to be opening or even moving. After about the 3rd workshop, the silence broke though, and I started to get comments like, knowing this 12-year statistics, why would anyone choose this lifestyle? Or if we allow a gay resident to come in, will everyone have HIV? There's this massive disconnect between the statistics that I was talking about and the fact that these numbers were impacting millions of people, not only in the country, but people that they saw every day, their neighbors, their other staff. And I got really frustrated with the fact that I just felt that they couldn't see the impact that this was having on people in their communities. And the thing was that staff and residents really believed that they had never met someone who was gay or lesbian or trans. And so all they had were fear and stereotypes, whatever they had read or seen or heard. And that's one of the problems with data and statistics. It's really easy to disconnect when you hear general numbers about groups of people that you don't know or you don't think you know. It's much easier to make assumptions, to generalize, and to be afraid with these big numbers. But when you see someone or know someone or love someone who's part of these statistics, it's much harder to look away. And this is the inspiration and purpose of this exhibit, Eye to Eye, to see real people behind the data, to look into their eyes, to hear their stories, and make the connection between these scary statistics and the impact they've had and are having on real people. The 20 portraits you see where you are and outside are women who I've interviewed for my research. And when I asked if they all want to be part of this exhibit, they all said yes. These are beautiful and brave and courageous women, brave for being out about who they really are. Like Shirley, who's on the right side, didn't come out until she was 81. So to be visible and on that wall is a level of courage that I've really been grateful to be part of. This art exhibit is doing what I've never been able to do with any of the data I've worked with. It's telling the story of real people. These are people you know. They're your neighbors, your friends, your family, your colleagues. They're not scary. They're ordinary, beautiful, real people, just like everyone else, and they happen to be LGBTQ. People have asked me what my hope is for this exhibit, and I hope that these women and their stories stay with you, so that when you hear something negative about the LGBTQ community, you speak up and you help stop the stigma and you help stop the fear before it leads to more hate. So thank you for having me. Thank you for viewing the exhibit, and happy Pride.
Love will not lose. Love will not lose. Even if the evidence in the daily news seems to suggest that it will, even if we despair of the values we thought we shared, even if we imagine the divisions between us have grown too wide, love will not lose. Right? Love cannot be constrained by legal walls, political pieties, or institutional fear. Love is the subversion of power by mercy and compassion. It is the uncontrolled spirit of hope that erodes the authority of oppression. Love is the human soul made visible. Once we see it in the other's eyes, no force on earth can compel us to deny its reality. No matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes, love will not lose.